Okay.
All right, now that we have everyone's attention, Dave's going to do his presentation. We thank him very much for it in advance.
Actually, I forgot it about an hour and a half ago, but that's all right. I build models now out of card. I also build them out of wood, but those are home in glass cases, and that's where they're going to stay. Paper modeling began in the late 1870s in Germany as a hobby, and then it was castles and cathedrals and things like that. And as time went on, they got more and more complicated, and people started, you can get airplanes, you can get practically anything in card. I happen to have a friend up in Canada who designs them, and he got me involved in a few more that came along. One good thing about them is they don't cost much, so if you truly mess one up, you can throw it away and get another one. And I have some here, which if people have any interest in it, when I get back in the model booth, I have a monitor kit that I give the kids to get them going. And I also have a lighthouse kit. And that's the standard joke every Saturday. Oops, I guess they're all back on the table. I hand one out through the glass window and say, see, it hardly weighs anything. It's a lighthouse.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I get a laugh. Groan. At any rate, all you really need is a straight edge and an awful lot of number 11 X-Acto knife blades, and you're in business cutting these out. It does take, sometimes they have hundreds of, thank you. This is the lighthouse that I have to give to the children. And I also have a monitor model that Mr. Lipinski designed for us. I did this one to give it the prop in order to, so that it had any strength, because it has an interior structure. We actually did it with some of the red lead showing. In other words, in light ship condition. And when you finally get down and do it in scale, that's all that was really above the what. Are you here? Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm still on the other one, but I can switch.
Yeah. It's about 3/32 of an inch to scale in this monitor. There was practically no freeboard at all. It was supposed to have been 18 inches, and it ended up 15 inches as launched. So by the time you loaded it up with coal, etc., heaven only knows how much free. Almost became the world's first self-propelled submarine. But in any case, they can get fairly complicated. Darius did this one as a design. This is a World War II Flower class Corvette. Even the United States Navy got 9 Flower class Corvettes, some of them built in England and some in Canada in reverse lend-lease, and they were used just to escort convoys along the east coast of the United States. What was I going to say about them? This one, I'm more interested in what the ship did than in what the model looks like. So if you can see this one, this is a rather interesting ship. The kit comes, it's a father and son company in Cambridge, England, who do them, design them. This vessel began life as to have been a German cargo vessel for use in the Baltic. It became British when the war ended. Actually, no, it was built in Sweden, excuse me. It ended up working along the northern coast of Canada and Alaska, trading things that people needed, food and what's all, for pelts. And it got stuck in the ice. And in the process of getting stuck in the ice, this is in 1931, the captain managed to bend the propeller blades and knock the rudder off. So the crew were taken off, and they were the first people rescued by airplane. They flew a little plane out, and it flew out, landed on the ice, picked up 3 people, came back to where the larger airplane was, and it took them to Port Barrow, Alaska. The ship was abandoned in the ice. They got the local people came and got the pelts off and took them by dog sled, delivered them that way. So there it's at. It was last seen floating in 1969 by a Canadian Air Force patrol plane. So it was known as the ghost ship of the Arctic. Partly it sank shortly thereafter, finally. They went up and salvage people looked at it and said, well, it's an old ship. It's not very big, so the heck with it. So nobody ever tried to tow it out again. I have them. Somebody had a picture of one of them earlier. There's a kit for the Bismarck that's about yay long. I've seen it in the Deutsches Schifffahrtsmuseum in Bremerhaven. Built. It has only slightly less than 8,000 pieces that you're supposed to cut out of paper. And that's an awful lot of money on just X-Acto knife blades, if I can do it. So some of them are incredibly detailed. Some of them are not for younger people to make and things like that. I did bring along, this one was a birthday present. It was a Russian monitor that I never heard of until I saw on the bottom of a catalog part of this picture and said, what the heck is that thing? And I wrote my friend and he said, oh, it's, I can't remember its name, particularly since this is in Russian. Udyarny, I think it is. It's a Russian monitor built in the early 1930s for river work and then got sunk by the German aircraft. So it never made it into Jane's Fighting Ships or any other reference book. So but it's a genuine monitor. There are still monitors in 5 navies. Well, they call them monitors. The only ones that, 5 are now 4. I don't think the 3 Ukrainian ones are probably still not floating. But Romania has some that were built in the 1980s and 90s. And then 3 navies in South America. They're really river gunboats. We actually built an unknown number converted LCM-6's landing craft, U.S. Navy landing craft during the Vietnam War, which were used on the rivers. And what are we going to call them? We don't know. Monitors. Okay, so they were monitors, but they weren't very much armored except for some bar armor. But the Navy didn't keep very good records. So when you ask the Navy, well, how many did you build? It's something like 60, but they don't know, which is interesting. And apparently the Vietnamese don't know either. This one, the Russian one. This one is for a World War I set of monitors. There were 19 of them built. The M33, I have finished the model on that in the exhibit. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not really very organized. This is an extra. If you want your model to be really stiff, you can get laser cut parts. I don't know if this shows or not. So that's going to be helpful on that one. Otherwise, it's probably going to be floppy.
Laser cut in cardboard?
They're cut in cardboard. Good cover stock is generally, when I have these things reprinted, the guy at the printing shop in Williamsburg knows what size thickness they need to be for me. And in each country, the problem is if it's a Polish kit, it's metric paper, and if it's ours, so I have a tough time trying to duplicate any of the things. Oh, by the way, that's the first thing I do when I get a new kit is to immediately go and use a color printer and make spares in case I mess up parts, which doesn't really cost much. And I don't think I'm violating copyright, but I am. Don't arrest me.
Yeah, you're not selling it.
That's true. At any rate, it's a lot of fun. If you mess it up, you can just get another one. The monitors, this kit was interesting because he provided, this one hasn't been rigged yet. That's my next step. One of the interesting things is if you happen to have really good eyesight and can see through the pilot house or down here the windows, all the parts are in there, including the captain's couch that he was supposed to sleep on when they were out in dangerous waters, all complete with the little indentations in the because it was a leather couch. Anyway, this was an early flower class, the early flower class ships. The forecastle was only this long. The later ones, it extended all the way back to abaft the superstructure block. Ours, of course, got rearmed with American guns instead of British guns. And we really piled on more depth charges for one reason or another. Almost every one of them has some kind of a story that can be told. Here's one. Heinz Schiller didn't come down today, but this is a kit for the Statue of Liberty. And it also throws in a couple of boats and a model of a Dornier DO, I think it was DO-10 or DO-12, which was a seaplane that was what?
Yeah, Dornier 10, yeah.
Yeah, Dornier 10.
Seaplane with about
Yeah, I have a kit to build one this big, but it required 12 engines, three pairs on each wing. And I had only one or two of them built, but Heinz's mom actually flew in one in about 1931 or 32 when they were new. And they did come over here and they did visit New York. So it sort of tied in for the company who designed. This is the HMV company, which is German. And but the same ideas, but I haven't figured out yet how to fold the dress.
Yeah.
So I may build the seaplane and forget the statue.
Yeah.
If you just go onto I was down to one sheet of where you can get them for nothing, but they are on the internet. If you just get on and Google card models, you will come up with dozens of different sources, all of which are free downloads. And there's a fellow who did nothing but Civil War ships, and I thought when he passed away that was the end of it because it disappeared. But it's back, and unfortunately I found it by accident when fiddling around with my computer. But if you come by the model booth, I've got his model of a Passaic class monitor with the torpedo, was called torpedo rakes. Mines were called torpedoes up until about 1880. And this thing was supposed to catch the Confederate mines if they were steaming or if they were just cutting them loose and letting them float down the river. And I have another one in there that was from, the Albemarle, which was a Confederate one, which Lieutenant Cushing and his steamboat, they rammed their mine into it and it blew up and he ended up in Congress later on after he left the US Navy because he was apparently rather averse to taking orders, which tends to limit careers, or it did in those days. Anyway, I know you're all, one more thing. We had a visitor before who actually designs these, a fellow from Poland who was the Polish Air Force attaché to Washington. He's a lieutenant colonel. He designs them, and you can come up and look at these later, but I don't know if this will show. This is a card model, and it's absolutely incredible. Now, obviously, if you don't want it to fall apart in a breeze, the sails are made out of cloth, except that you can also get them laser cut for you by the company that makes it in England. I thought it was a Polish company. Thought, what are you going to do? Call a company? How about Shipyard? So the name of the card model company is Shipyard. And I've got some detailed close-up photos of it too. They come not painted, you paint them. He gave us a really good talk on card modeling, and he had to go home when COVID started, but now he's back in Washington, and I'm going to try and get him down here again, at least to visit, because we trade emails now and then. This other one here, and the only other one I brought, I've got fair number at home. This was the builder, Darius Lipinski's sort of trial model for a Russian T-301 minesweeper. If I'm repeating myself, I do apologize. It's perfect. I had to repair it this morning, but it shows you what somebody who really is good at doing miniature things. The interesting thing about T-301s was the Russians couldn't do compound curving on making hull plating or anything. This is during World War II, and they had to build a bunch of minesweepers in a hurry along the edges of riverbanks, and they just launch them into the river. So they go like that in all the shape, and it slowed them down by about 1/8 of a knot, so why not? And a couple of them, 4 of them lasted in the Albanian Navy until, maybe 2005, I think was the last edition of the reference book I used to do for the Naval Institute, one of the world's navies, that it showed up in that. That's about it, except I have some, again, I brought a few in. I just had some printed yesterday for anybody who wants to give it a try. And I also have the monitor models in 2 versions. And the reason for 2 versions is, yes, she was painted black. No, she wasn't shiny, but that's unfortunately how the print shop did it. But Krylon has a very nice flat spray that'll take care of that problem. And this is one that we can give to the kids. But the other one I had done, I had it printed so it was sort of a dark gray. And the reason was, well, it was really black. Well, this is what it looked like after it had been through all that salt water and spray coming down from New York to Hampton Roads. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. But that shows the top. It's the only model you can get of the monitor from any source that shows the top of the turret right. They've all got it wrong because they show it as a grid. Well, that's how Ericsson drew it when he was designing it. I found out a few years ago when I was illustrating books for a guy named Norman Friedman, same publisher as the one that you had earlier. And I discovered that in the 19th century, they would frequently show what was underplating on a deck, as well as what was on the deck, and sometimes what was above it, all on the same plate to save paper. So Ericsson was drawing the supports for the 6 half-inch thick iron plates that made up the top of the turret, through which some poor soul had to drill 440 1-inch diameter holes. I've been under the turret when it was out, and yep, they're there. So all the plastic kits, and even the ones we have in the gift shop, they're wrong. But I don't think that gets me any extra points. So, and anyway, it's just kind of interesting to me because it would be just as easy to have made the models correctly if anybody had bothered to do some historical research on it. At any rate, that's about it, except it's something that you can do and put away, and it doesn't take up much room. And again, if you mess it up, you could just go get another one. Or if you're like me, you do make a second one just in case I run out of spare parts. And we were talking about cowl ventilators earlier. Oddly enough, that's the hardest thing to do in a card model. And they're not very convincing looking. And I'm working on one back in the booth now, which isn't quite a monitor because it had about a 10-inch freeboard, 10-foot freeboard, but it's a Russian ship, almost contemporaneous with monitor. It was launched in 1863 and completed in 1865. And it, where was I going with that? It has 2 cowl ventilators on each turret, and I can't figure out how the heck, why? Because they fired the guns and then it would have went down through the cowl ventilator, but that's where they are. It's kind of interesting to look at, and if you have a chance, stop by, I'll be back there. And since I imagine both of you are very hungry, all of you are very hungry, I'll stop. But come look at what I've got in there, because I've got a dozen more kits spread out and people can look at them. They're almost all either 1 to 250 scale or 1 to, I think it's 1 to 150. This one, unfortunately, these are the larger scale. This is one of the British ones with the 9.2-inch cut. This is kind of interesting. The other ones have a full forecastle, fully full forecastle. That was where the enlisted people lived, up there. They turned out to be about 200. They were supposed to be 500 tons. They came in at 650. Oops. So you were not allowed to fire this gun in broadside. You'd have rolled the ship over. But they managed to crank them out. These were started in 1914. And the Admiral, Churchill, who was like our Secretary of the Navy at that point, Winston Churchill, first Lord of the Admiralty, he wanted to call them bombardment vessels, which is kind of pompous name for it. And Admiral Fisher, who was like our Chief of Naval Operations, said, no, then the Russians will know why we're building them, what they're for, which was to shoot at the Germans in Belgium at that point. So Fisher said, let's call them monitors because nobody's quite sure what a monitor is. The Brits not only built 39 monitors during World War I. Oh, I can go on forever on that, and I won't. But the last two British monitors were built during World War II, the Roberts and the Abercrombie, and they were still floating in 1955. I have a kit at home to build the Peruvian monitor Huáscar, which is still afloat, but it's in Chile because they captured it in 1889, and the Peruvians still want it back. They still argue about it. It's famous for having gone through 4 commanding officers in one afternoon because the commanding officer was too brave to go down to the armored conning tower. He stood on the bridge and they kept getting killed. In a battle between, well, actually, Huáscar was captured by Peruvian rebels and used by them. She was the first ship ever to have torpedoes fired at it. And since they didn't use tubes, this was on HMS Shaw. They just had a chute like this on either side, and you put the torpedo in, pulled the lanyard, got the motor going, and of course it went because it had no gyros. First wave it hit. The first time they missed, second time they put the torpedo in one of the ship's boats and rowed madly after the Huáscar and fired, and it missed. Just pulled the lanyard and heaved it over the side. Anyway, that's about it. I could go on all afternoon, but I have to save some voice. Sir.
I have one comment.
Yep.
There is a museum in Carolina that has a copy of the model of the monitor that has the perforated plates on top.
You're kidding.
It belonged to NOAA. I did a restoration when Dave Kropp was here. Dave Kropp gave me the diagram for the dotted holes, and Gene Berger photo etched it for me. And that is on that model. And then NOAA has lent it to the Carolina Museum. So that's the only accurate model on display right now.
Well, then you beat me to it. Doggone it. Well, somebody has one, sir.
Quick question. I'd like to get a card model of like a tramp steamer or.
Oh, merchant ships I've got, yeah.
Okay.
Come by the booth. I'll show you one that I was going to maybe do next because I'm getting tired of monitors.
Okay, good.
Sorry to say that in here. I have one for a very small British tanker from the 1920s, but they've got ocean liners. They've got, I've got several kits for, container ships.
Oh, yes.
And one of those that I can build. And I thought, well, it doesn't have enough containers. And I said, okay, dummy, just because the kit only gives you 40 doesn't mean you can't copy those. And oops, I just dropped my wedding ring. There it goes. Sorry. Rather not lose that. I already lost the magnet that holds my badge on this morning. They're used to me losing them here. Anyway, that's about it. You can come up and please do and look closely, or I'll be back in the booth in a few minutes. And unfortunately, our cafeteria is closed partly through November, so or I could sell you my lunch. Anyhow, that's it, and thank you very much for your patience. And
Thank you, Dave, for your patience waiting to get to this point in the day.
I was fast flagging. Sorry.
I'm impressed with the amount of detail that goes into some of those.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Well, this one, the problem with rigging is that I just haven't found the right thing to do rigging with. I have this sort of stretchy stuff that the plastic model airplane users do, but unfortunately, all that does is bend the mast if you try to put too much tension on it. So I'm still haven't found the perfect rigging material. I've done a little bit of rigging on the model of the M33 that's in the display window. And the railings, and I was going to rig the one I'm working on, but I forgot to drill the holes before I assembled it. So again, we're not going for quality, we're going for quantity.
They look pretty good to me. Thank you again.
Well, that's very kind of you.